You're listening to the best of the Martha Zoller Show. You can hear the show live Monday through Friday from 9 to 11 on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN and streaming at accesswdun.com. You can find all things Martha Zoller at marthazoller.com. It is the Martha Zoller Show, and of course we learned after the show went off the air Friday of the death of Vince Dooley. And joining me right now is Herschel Walker. Herschel Walker was the Heisman Trophy winner for the national championship team. He played under Vince Dooley and was a lifelong friend of Vince Dooley. He's also our candidate for United States Senate. Herschel Walker, welcome back to the program.
Hey, thank you, Martha. Thank you for having me on, and God bless you guys, and God bless the Dooley family.
Tell us about your relationship with Vince Dooley.
Well, what was so strange is when I was playing, I was scared to death of him because, he was like a father figure in the sense that he kept us in line, he kept us respectful, and so I was afraid of him. And when I got out of school, I realized he was one of the greatest men I've ever known because he taught me discipline, he taught me respect, and he was just like my parents. And I said he and Miss Dooley, they were parents to me, so that they lose someone like that, it hurts. It hurts. And I tell everyone, I was running this great commercial that he filmed for me of his endorsement. And when he passed, I wanted to remove that commercial. And, Miss Dooley said, no, he wanted you to keep that commercial going. And that just tells you the type of man he was. He's caring about me while he's going through these tough times. And I just want to thank the Dooley family and thank him so much.
Of course, people know about some of the struggles that you've had over the years with mental health. And I also know that you maintain that relationship with the Dooleys throughout all these years. How important was that relationship in you being able to get the help that you needed along the way?
Well, that was very important because, with Coach Dooley reinforcing what my parents had taught me, when I left home, he reinforced that if you got a problem, you get that problem taken care of. And that's one thing that I did. A lot of times, a lot of people hide in silence or they hide in the closet. Well, when I knew I had a problem, I went ahead and got it taken care of. And that's the reason I tell so many people now, there's absolutely no shame to ask for help. And I did it, and you can do it as well. But one thing you got to do is don't be afraid. Don't listen to the outsiders because the outsiders will keep you from going to get help. But I know there's people out there that can help you if you're willing to go out and ask for that help.
A lot of people used to talk about whether Vince Dooley might run for office in the past. And, of course, you ended up running for office, and he has been one of the people that have helped you throughout the way. I worked with Barbara Dooley when I worked for Cox Media Group, and they purchased WGAU. And as you know, Barbara Dooley is a dynamo on her own. I mean, she is one of the most amazing people that you've seen. How important is that relationship? And as you've run for the United States Senate?
That's very important because Coach Dooley taught leadership. He was a leader. He taught leadership. He taught discipline. He taught never giving up. He taught when you get knocked down, you get up. And that's the same as Ms. Right now. I cry for Ms. Dooley because, the two of them, they were a team. They were a team, and now to see the team broken up. But I want her to know that, that I'm here for her, that she has a great family. She has so many great people that are there for her because she is such a wonderful woman, and she will always have Coach Dooley with her because we will always be with her, and we're a part of Coach Dooley as well.
Absolutely. So you're on the campaign trail today. You've got this bus tour going on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, we are. We're headed up to Ringo, and we're going to start there this morning. And then we're going to go down to Cartersville. One of the things that I told in my campaign we got to do is continue to get out and meet the people. Right now, they got so many people coming in. I don't know if everyone saw Obama came in last week and all the things he was saying. And one of the things that they're not talking about disinflation. They're not talking about crime. They're not talking about putting men and women in sports. They're not talking about things that matters. They're talking about everything else because they're trying to trick you. But I want all the people to know that the left right now don't know, they don't have solutions for all the problems that they've caused. and they've done this in less than 2 years, and we cannot take 6 more years of this. So we got to come together and vote the right leadership in, and that's going to be Herschel Walker.
You know, they're talking about you a lot is what they're doing. They're not talking about what they did or what they're going to do. They're spending a lot of time trying to tear down Herschel Walker.
Well, you know, one thing that is so strange is I hope everybody saw during the debate who's the adult in the room. And I think they saw that was Herschel Walker. So I can go to Washington right now and lead right now, whereas I don't think he can because he's proven that he can't. When he voted with Joe Biden 96% of the time, and everyone said Joe Biden is headed in the wrong direction, he was on that debate stage. He couldn't answer questions, and I think that's not a leader. A leader would take responsibility. Right now, he's one of the key reasons we're in the situation we're in. He voted against the Keystone Pipeline. He put men and women's sports. He against that border being secured. He's against everything that's great for America and great for Georgia. He's against it. But he want to talk about me, but yet I built the company. What has he done since he has been what has he done at that church? What he's done at that church is he said America need to apologize for its whiteness, and I call him a Marxist. I said he's a false prophet because the things he says is a hypocrite, and I'm not afraid to call him out on that because right now this seat belongs to the people of Georgia, and what he did when he got this seat the last cycle, he didn't do the right thing. He went to Washington, he represented Joe Biden and not represented the people of Georgia.
So before I let you go, I want to talk about this big game here on Saturday between the Georgia Bulldogs and the Tennessee Volunteers. I don't think at the beginning of the season we would have foreseen that this is probably going to be the biggest game of the year next to the national championship game. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you're 100% correct. This is going to be a big, big game, and I'm so happy that we're playing it in Athens and not in Tennessee. So Tennessee has really got a roll going right now. But I got a lot of trust in the Dogs. They're playing well. You know, against Florida, you know, everyone thought they let down just for a little bit, but Coach Smart got them right back up, and they got back to playing the way they know how to play. So I'm looking forward to this game coming up against Tennessee, and that's going to be a good game for them. The SEC is always going to be tough. Every week you play in the SEC is going to be a tough game. This is going to be a tough game coming up this Saturday, but I'm going to give the edge to the Dogs. Being at home, I want the crowd to get out. They got to cheer them on. They got to make it very tough for Tennessee to hear the snap count. Let's help the Dogs pull this one out.
Absolutely. And I know you're traveling around a little bit with my old friend Michael Steele, the lieutenant colonel. He has done a great thing for this country, and I know he's been traveling with you.
He has. Let me tell you, I played with Michael Steele, and you know, I've been to over 400 bases, and I'm almost cried. I used to tell Julie, I go to a base and someone would tell me, they'll say, you know, you played with Michael Steele. And I said, yes. And they would say, that guy saved my life. They talk about what he's done in the military, and he's a true hero. And that's one reason I'm running, because there's been so many true heroes that we have forgotten. Our men and women in blue, we've forgotten about our heroes in the military that fought for the freedoms that we have right now. And when you see someone in Washington that's trying to bring wokeness into our military, pronouns to our military, we're going to get our men and women killed. We want leaders that's going to stand behind them, and they can know that we have their backs, and that's the reason I'm running for this office right now.
Herschel Walker, good luck to you. Maybe I'll see you Saturday if you're at the game, and I look forward to talking with you more. You call in anytime you want to.
Hey, thank you, and tell everyone to go to teamherschel.com, and let's get out and let's win this great seat for the great people of Georgia, because Georgia deserves a senator that's going to do right by them. God bless you guys.
It's where North Georgia comes to talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and look, energy is going to be one of these big topics in this election. I mean, it's going to be the cost of energy, that cost that impacts everything else, as well as things related to education and your kids. Those are going to be the things that people are voting on. Tom Pyle is joining us right now. He's the president of the American Energy Alliance. And look, we've got to, first of all, Tom, welcome to the program. First of all, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Martha.
So first of all, we got to stop demonizing companies that make profits, whether it's energy, whether it's oil companies, whether it's energy manufacturers, whoever it is. We got to stop doing that. But secondly, we've got to start encouraging people to understand what people really care about, which is being able to get from one place to another at a reasonable cost and have their goods delivered from one place to another at a reasonable cost.
Absolutely, 100% right. I mean, that is the source of all of the pain, most of the pain that we're feeling right now, right? The cost of energy is embedded into every single thing we wear, we eat, we buy, the services that we depend on, Amazon, for example. So, we have the most oil, gas, and coal resources underneath our lands and waters than any other country in the world, including Russia. And we have proven that we can be energy independent and we can keep prices low. But we have an administration and we have a Congress that wants not only to demonize these industries, but put them out of business. They campaigned on it, Martha. I mean, that's as simple as that.
So what do we need to do? I mean, what do we need to know? It seems to me, and I've spent a lot of time recently listening to the inaugural address for President Kennedy, and he had, this Western Hemisphere idea, this talk about strengthening the Western Hemisphere. You talk about the reserves that we have in the United States, but Canada is also has huge energy reserves. So does Mexico. So does South America. And it seems to me that if we focused on being energy independent in this hemisphere, that means helping our neighbors a little bit, being involved, but also helping ourselves. Doesn't that create an environment where we can be strong and then we can be real participants in the global economy without people holding us hostage?
Very insightful. And if you think about it, Canada and the United States alone are a huge source of the energy that the world has become dependent on. And what did the Biden administration do? The first thing they did was cut the link between Canada and the United States, namely the Keystone Pipeline, right? It's these kind of things that absolutely drive you batty. We could be strengthening that bond with Canada. They could be bringing that oil down to our refiners down in the Gulf, and we could be producing enough here and then producing even more to give to the world. That's a win-win, but yet this administration cut that off first day in office. So very important, insightful. Look, their agenda is making our energy more expensive and increasing our dependence on China. At a time when China is flexing its muscles around the world, strong-arming Taiwan and doing other things that are not in our best interest, and that's a problem. That's a long-term problem that we've got to get out of.
Today the president is touting the fact that a lot of manufacturing jobs are coming back to the United States, which is absolutely a true statement. If the pandemic taught us anything, there ought to be certain things that we make here that we weren't making here, and a lot of companies are finding it advantageous to do that. But the energy picture is intimately entwined in that, right? We have got to get people in office with a consistent policy. And when we see a very clear line of demarcation in our own Georgia delegation, the Republican members of the Georgia delegation are 100% as far as supporting energy policy. The Democratic members, including our two senators, are 0. And we've got to get away from that people have got to start voting what's best for the United States, not just what they think is best for their party.
Absolutely. And it is really troubling to me because Senator Warnock and Senator Ossoff both campaigned and both said that they were promised to be an independent voice for Georgia. And yet they voted 100% with Senator Schumer on the Biden green agenda. They didn't even didn't deviate at all. I mean, I would have been happy if they just, done one or two things that were pro-energy, but they did none. And like you said, it's too polarized, right? You have one party that, and I argue, gets it, understands the importance of these resources, and another that, quite frankly, I believe are beholden to a very narrow special interest, namely a radical environmental community that literally wants to put oil and gas producers out of business. And it's not good for the country. It's not good for Georgians. And it's not good for anybody, for that matter. If you look at what's going on in Europe, we can supply a lot of gas to Europe, but we can't if we have policies that say we want to put you out of business in this country.
We're talking to Tom Pyle, the president of the American Energy Alliance. And, you know, our mutual friend Mark Feifley, who I've known for years, knows that I like to get into the philosophical, but I draw a direct line to 1913 when we started the direct election of senators, because when we disconnected the U.S. senator from the legislature, they stopped having their first responsibility to the state they represented. And that's what began this long march to these senators voting as a partisan bloc as opposed to what's best for their states. And I'm just going to keep working hard to shine a light on that.
Wow, you are speaking my language. I have been talking about this for a long time. That was the beginning of the end of the venerable institution, that great body known as the Senate, because they are no longer in tune with what their states' needs are. And you've nailed it. I mean, that is absolutely very insightful, and I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, thank you very much. There was a couple of 1913. Income tax and direct election of senators. In 1966, the mixing together of the Social Security and Medicare money with the general fund. Those are the two things that really set us to this path where we have today, but nobody wants to talk about it or fix it. And you get up there, and now we have, a Congress, with all due respect, they've got a great salary and they got a pension plan and they put in air conditioning so now they can meet all year long. And it's just a cushy job now, and it's a job they want to keep instead of a job they want to serve in. That's why I'm encouraged to see that the Congress is turning over a little bit more now, because at least that's more representative.
Air conditioning provided by energy, of course.
That's right. That's right. You are right about that.
One of the things that, we have got to have in this next election, as you mentioned, is critical. We have got to stop the madness. We've got to get the government out of the business of telling us what kind of cars we can drive, what kind of energy we can use, how much of it we can use, all of that stuff. That's essential.
Tom Pyle. Yeah, we appreciate very much you being with us today. We're going to talk again because I think we could have some nice long conversations. Thank you for being with us. You can go to AmericanEnergyAlliance.org and see what they're doing. You can follow Tom at Tom J. Pyle and American Energy Alliance at AEA. Thanks for being with me today.
You betcha.
It's local radio, and that's why you're listening. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
We're going to talk about something that's really important, upcoming elections, but also upcoming football games. Senator Marsha Blackburn is joining me from across the river. We are going to be talking a little bit about UGA-UT. And, hey, Marsha, how are you?
I am doing great. And, yes, I'm actually in Knoxville working today and went to an event last night to honor the East Tennessean of the Year, which is Randy Boyd and his wife. They were honored as the outstanding citizens, and Randy Boyd is the president of UT.
Well, I will tell you, it has been a week, right? So the University of Georgia is number one in the polls, with UT number two. Then the CFP rankings came out that had Tennessee number one and Georgia number three. This is the biggest game that has ever been played at Sanford Stadium. Who would have thought last year that Tennessee would be in this place? And that we would be remembering Vince Dooley at this time, too. So it is a real huge weekend for Georgia and Tennessee football fans.
Well, it is. And, Marsha, I think for each of the schools, when you talk about Vince Dooley, you talk about the leadership that he brought to bear and how he worked on building character. and making certain that people knew to be competitors, but they also knew how to lead. And when you look at the instance of UT, Randy Boyd, as president of UT, brought back Phil Fulmer as athletic director to get the program back on a good standing. And then Phil Fulmer and Randy Boyd brought in Danny White as the athletic director. And then they brought in Hoople as the coach. So here you have people, you have a good, strong leader at the top that brings in other people who can be leaders, that integrity and character matters, and knowing how to lead makes a difference. And that is one of the things that is so applicable to politics. Having people that are listening, that know how to listen, and then know how to turn that listening into leadership. And it's one of the reasons that Herschel Walker has moved into the lead in this Senate race. And one of the reasons that he is going to win and why he is going to be the next senator for Georgia.
Well, and one of the last things that Vince Dooley did, Coach Dooley did, was record an ad for Herschel Walker. And we had Herschel on earlier in the program, and he offered to the family to take the ad down because, you know, he wasn't sure how Barbara would feel about it, and they said no. That's what he wanted to do. You need to run that ad because he did that for you and he wanted you to use it. And so, you know, it's been a long relationship. Herschel Walker's also had a long relationship with Governor Kemp. They've known each other. Governor Kemp is like family to the Dooleys. So it's going to be a very great last few days. The numbers are very good, but people, today is the last day of early voting, and then you go to the polls on Tuesday and take your friends to make sure everybody gets out to vote.
And that's exactly right, and we need everybody to vote. And when you go to church on Sunday, be sure that you ask everybody in your Sunday school class, everybody that you sit near in church, have you voted? Because every vote is going to matter. And I was in Iowa with Senator Grassley and Governor Reynolds and the ticket out there. And, Martha, we talked a lot about every vote mattering because Congresswoman Miller Meeks 2 years ago won her race by 6 votes. 6. So every vote does matter.
Every vote matters. Now, we've had fantastic turnout in early voting. How has Tennessee's early voting been?
Tennessee's early voting has been great. We have done very well. We feel like the vote that supports a lot of our competitive races. We're seeing the polling precincts that are going to be very supportive of some of our candidates. They're voting. We also are hearing so much from people who identify as Democrats who say, you know what, I cannot vote for a Democrat because of the high inflation, the crime that is in some of our cities, the fear of what is happening to retirement accounts. You know, up on the plateau around Crossville and in East Tennessee, we have so many retirement communities, and people are saying, no, we cannot support this. And so they are voting Republican, some of them voting Republican for the very first time.
Absolutely. So, Marsha Blackburn, tell me what your day looks like today. What are you going to be doing in this final day before we get to Tuesday?
We are out doing some work. We're going to be working with the Tennessee National Guard for a bit today and then heading back to Middle Tennessee, seeing people as we work through the day. And then there is a charity event that I'm going to attend this evening. So all along the way, reminding people it is imperative to get out to vote.
Marsha Blackburn, thank you so much for your help you've given us here in Georgia, and also, for your support of the Republican ticket here in Georgia. We appreciate it very much, and your friendship means a lot to me, and we're going to keep talking about the issues that are important to the people of Georgia and the country.
You got it. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Go Dogs.
Putting the talk in news talk. It's the Martha Zoller Show on AM 550 and FM 102.9 WDUN.
It is the Martha Zoller Show, and it's so great to have you back. And I got to admit, I'm going to be a little bit of a fangirl here. Tulsi Gabbard is joining me right now. She's a former congresswoman. She's a veteran. She's a former Democrat. She's working all over the country on campaigns. And you know what? We have been in different parties most of our career, but I have always respected the work that she's done. And I have been trying to get her on this program for a long time, and I am so glad to welcome her here today. Welcome, Tulsi.
Good morning, Martha. Thank you so much. It's so great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. I have got to ask you one question that I have been waiting to ask you since you ran for president.
I'm ready. I'm ready.
So when you were gaining a little bit of traction, if I remember correctly, you got called up for a period of time because you were in the Hawaii National Guard. I thought that was kind of politically motivated at the time. But I've always wanted to ask you that because it really came at a time that really hurt your campaign.
I love that I get the opportunity to wear the uniform of this country, and I get to serve with so many great patriots. As you know, at that time, I was in the Hawaii National Guard. Now I'm in the Army Reserves. But as all National Guard and reservists, we got to go and do our 2 weeks of duty every year. And at that time, there was a mission in Indonesia, and I had to go and do my duty. People took it how they wanted to. It was not. It was right in the middle of a presidential campaign, so not necessarily the most convenient of times politically, but I was and remain proud to be able to have the opportunity to serve our great country.
Well, and you don't want to think that those kinds of things could happen, but I thought, wow, this is weird timing for this. But, of course, you're right. The United States military, my dad was in the Army. My nephew's in the Navy serving right now. So I know that you can't control the timing sometimes, that's for sure.
And they definitely don't, work around political calendars and campaigns. When duty calls, and you got to go. That's part of the job.
So recently you left the Democratic Party, and you've been really on the campaign trail for a number of people over the last few weeks. You're going to be campaigning with Herschel Walker later on today. Tell us about that process and why you're in Georgia today.
Well, Martha, the biggest reason why I left the Democrat Party is that it's now controlled by radical ideologues who are pushing their anti-freedom woke agenda on all of us as Americans, and very dangerously are using these public institutions like the Department of Justice and the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, institutions that are supposed to be serving the people. They're politicizing them to go after their political opponents. They're seeking to silence and smear anyone who dares to challenge them or oppose this agenda. And how could I, as an American and as a proud soldier and veteran, continue to align myself with a party that hates freedom and is trying to take our freedoms away? So I left the Democrat Party and immediately was asked by different candidates across the country to come and help them, candidates who, like me, understand the importance of our Constitution, how dangerous it is that we have people in power in Washington and in states across the country who are trying to take our freedoms away. And that's really the critical choice that voters have in this election. It's why I'm out here in Georgia, where I'm actually in the Herschel bus at the moment, and we're driving to our first event because it's people like Herschel who will be that check on the abuse of power in this administration, which just doesn't exist right now.
Well, I'm a graduate of the University of Georgia. We call it, I'm a double dog. I have 2 degrees from the University of Georgia. One of my degrees is in American politics, my master's degree, and I did my thesis on women's electoral success in the Republican Party, but I looked at the whole part of women's electoral success. And it's interesting, it's not the money, it's it's the primary system in a lot of ways, because women are perceived to be more liberal than their male counterparts, and that helps them in a Democrat party, in a Democrat primary. It hurts them in a Republican primary. But what we're seeing across the country is just an explosion of candidates, whether they be candidates of color like Herschel Walker or women. All sorts of folks are running, and I'm encouraged by that, because it really reflects America, because it also shows that loving freedom is not the purview of any one party.
And that right there is really the whole point, is as Americans, we love this country, and what makes this country so great and so special are our God-given rights and freedoms that are enshrined in the Constitution. And what I've been hearing as I've been traveling across the country, really for these last 2 or 3 weeks, are Americans, fellow Americans, who maybe they're Democrats, Independents, Republicans, but people coming together and recognizing that if we don't take a stand now and stand up for our freedoms and stand against these very dangerous policies that the Democrats in Washington are pushing on our kids and our families and our communities, then I'm fearful that we lose the heart of this country that we love. And I think that's where there's real opportunity for us to come together. We're not going to agree on everything. There will be some key things you probably disagree on and should have real constructive dialogue and debate around. But the heart of it is, if we lose our freedoms, then we lose the right to have those debates and those conversations. We end up with an authoritarian-style government in place that seeks to silence or punish anyone who has a dissenting voice and view. And that is what is on the ballot. Freedom is on the ballot right now. And it's incumbent on all of us, regardless of political affiliation, to go and support candidates like Herschel Walker, who are committed to upholding that freedom and putting the well-being of the American people first.
So you're doing a podcast now, the Tulsi Gabbard Show. How can people listen to that, and how often do you put that together?
Yeah, we just launched the Tulsi Gabbard Show. You can find it on YouTube or Rumble or anywhere you listen to your podcast, Apple, Spotify, and new episodes are dropped every Tuesday. And really, it's an opportunity, whether it's a conversation on a show like yours or if it's an interview on TV. Usually, we only get a few minutes to talk about really important issues. So, on my podcast, I take a deep dive into a lot of the issues and topics that we're dealing with in our communities and our families across the country, as well as have some interesting conversations with great guests. So, encourage everybody to go and subscribe and listen. The last episode we just had this week, I was talking to Congressman Steve Scalise about the Second Amendment. He goes into, it's a really emotional conversation, actually. He talked about the shooting that he endured and survived back a few years ago in Washington when they had their baseball practice, and how he really got through that. Really, he almost died, and he got through that experience through prayer and faith in God and the love and prayers and support of people all across this country. It's a really wonderful conversation.
Well, and he's really one of the good guys. I ran for Congress 10 years ago, and it's funny because we joke about how the fact Mike Pence is the one of us who came out of talk radio that's been really successful as far as politics goes.
Right.
But it was a great experience to run. I am thankful, really, now looking back at it, that it turned out the way it did, because my husband had cancer twice since 2012. But he's doing great. Mm-hmm. He's several years out, and he's doing wonderful. But God knew what he was doing, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. I think I made Doug Collins a better candidate because I ran against him, and I wouldn't trade that experience. But I got to know Steve Scalise during that period of time, and he stayed in touch with me all throughout that period of time since then. And he's just one of those guys. He knows how to keep relationships, and I know you worked with him when you were in the House of Representatives, even though you were in different parties. But I'm sure he was that kind of guy to everybody.
He was, and he is. He remains that guy. He's so down to earth, and in politics, as you well know, Martha, it's so easy for people to fall into that transactional mode of, seeing others as a means to get what they want or to feed their ambition or whatever it is. And Steve is the opposite of that. When we served together in Congress, I wasn't on any of the same committees as he was. And, I wasn't going to help him, get elected to a higher position of power leadership in the House. So I had nothing real to contribute to him politically, but he was so kind, always spent time passing me in the hall saying, hey, how's your family doing? How's your husband? What's going on in Hawaii? And I just really appreciated that. And that's a sincere, genuine, kind human and someone I'm grateful to call a friend.
Absolutely. Tulsi Gabbard, thank you so much for being in Georgia today, helping Herschel Walker. We're going to get him across the finish line like it happened so many times when he was playing football for the University of Georgia. And tell folks again where they can find your podcast.
You can find the Tulsi Gabbard Show on YouTube or Rumble. You can watch it there, or you can listen to it on Apple or Spotify or anywhere else where you like to listen to your podcasts. Thank you so much.
To hear the full versions of last week's Martha Zoller shows, go to the podcast page at accesswdun.com, and you can follow me on social media at Martha Zoller.